Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Middle Path Podcast. This is Mike Escott, and
Luke McLean.
the Middle Path is two men living very different lives, thousands of miles apart, but we're sharing our insights and experiences on life, spirituality, and wellness. The Middle Path is a bridge between traditional teachings and modern life. This project is about helping and supporting men to find their middle path. And today we have Rob Starbuck, Breathwork extraordinaire, joining us here for a kind of nice little conversation. Luke, take it from there.
Rob, mate, super intrigued with your story into breathwork and that you came from an athletic background, and really it sounded like through the research, it was really on a journey to find yourself a little bit. And even today, as we're recording, you're talking a little bit about the hero's journey, on Instagram, and would love to just, again, unpack that a little bit about your journey into breathwork and how you arrived.
Oh, man. And I was just sharing, I was talking to my partner's brother the other day. And then he was asking about my story, and we were just reflecting on all of it. And I actually did the whole journey. So I have it. I was priming myself, I guess, for this podcast.
Feeling it. Good.
Yeah. Fresh in the awareness.
Yeah. So I would say, I feel like my journey inwards really started back in 2010 when I graduated from college, and I was playing football at Georgetown University up until 2010, and I had taken a trip with my parents and my sister overseas. My mother is Lebanese, and we went over to Lebanon and got to see Lebanon and got to see some extended family. But we came back, and when we came back, my sister was going back to college, so we sent her off back to college, and then I walked back into my parents' house at the time in North Carolina. I didn't have a plan after college. I was kind of procrastinating, like having a plan. Yeah, right.
Me too.
I know. Well, because before then, every year I had the next plan. It was like, okay, JV team, varsity team, get a college scholarship. It was just kind of like, those steps. And then, I came home that one day. We sent my sister back. I walked into my parents' house, and then it all hit me in the moment. And I felt like my whole concept of who I was just imploded in a moment, because I realized that I was no longer a student. I was no longer a student athlete or student of college. I was no longer a student athlete. I was no longer a football player. And my identity had been crafted over the course of, at that point, 15 years. From my earliest memories were playing soccer in Capitol Hill, playing on, the soccer team or the baseball team, football team eventually. And that was my identity. That was the value I was adding to the world. That's where all my self-worth came from. It's where my confidence came from. It's where my happiness was generated. So that was the first, the first moment where I was like, well, who am I?
Beyond.
And I think that's been guiding me since.
Yeah. And so I gather, Rob, so like in that college system of sports, because I come from a sporting background and so does Mike a bit, so much of your identity and your focus and energies invested into that reputation, that identity to be that athlete. And then it sort of, as you sort of mentioned, gets taken away very quickly once you graduate or once you're not going to get drafted to the NFL. What's left to pick up the pieces, really?
Yeah. And, I don't know how things are now, right? It's 2021 now. This is 11 years since I left college, but 11 years ago when I was leaving school, there wasn't a, support psychologically. I'm not talking about career wise, like, they'll get you to jobs, they'll get you to interviews, they'll help you write a resume, all that stuff. Psychologically though, there wasn't a whole lot of discussion around, yo, your life is about to change.
Yep. That's awesome.
Yeah. And, I'm grateful that it happened. At the time, I was just super, I got pretty shook up, and it forced me to kind of look inwards.
Beautiful.
That's great.
Man.
Yeah. It's funny too. Like I'll get into, I have a list of questions and everything else. It's funny that you're putting this in this kind of perspective too, because before I jump into anything, whether I'm doing this podcast or whatever else, it's like I do my research and I have my certain agenda. Like even when we started talking, before we did the intro and, just, getting everything rolling, before we actually hit record, it's like already the plan I had was already out the window, because it's like, oh dude, I know better, but I want to be true to what I want to prove that I have this, or I have this going, and just like I have these follow-up questions for these questions I haven't even asked yet, and all this kind of stuff and whatever. And and then automatically it organically goes in a certain direction. Of course, we're starting with your story and with all that kind of stuff too. And I just like, it's funny how like I even go to kick this off, it's like, well, the intro I just wrote, or in my head, it doesn't even sound right yet. So I'm just going to like shut up and let the intro go and let everything else go too. But I love the fact that you start off with, college ended. This whole thing ended, like you were talking about the whole hero's journey, the Joseph Campbell idea and all that kind of stuff too. And I see that is a theme. Obviously, it's a theme that, has been around for all of humanity. But to see that actually play out in our lives directly now is awesome. And I think that that's one of the reasons why, when I first took your breathwork class in Venice, I was already well on my path and well on my journey, and I was already doing yoga. I was already breathing. I was already doing everything I could do. I was meditating for hours. Everything was great. But it was that again, I had a plan. I walked in. I'm like, I'm going to take this guy's breathwork class. No big deal, right? Changed. You know what I mean? I left that room going like floating out with my arms up and the angels singing behind me. You know what I mean? And it's not me just, fluffing the ego or anything else too, but it was like there was an identity that I had walking into that. And that was the first thing that you just touched on now too, when you were saying, I'm leaving college. I had a plan. My plans have now ended. What do I do now? My whole identity is wrapped up in that. And I think that is the parallel that we're finding now, or at least that I'm finding now. And I'm seeing, one reason why Luke and I even wanted to start this podcast or whatever else was, in my industry, I left the music industry recently. The music industry has changed because of COVID, because we can't do, everything's changed because of COVID. But realistically, where I'm seeing the impact is like, people are losing their careers and everything else because they can't do the only thing they know how to do. Where I'm going with this, I guess, too, is a long-winded way to say is like, it's great that you already had that, and you had that question of who am I? Now, I did that also when I was, like 20 years ago, but then I did it also 7 years ago. And now here I am doing it again. It really is a cycle. Have you noticed a cycle? Are you you already mentioned you were no longer a collegiate student, but now you're forever student. Where are you on that path now? Like, what are you learning? Where are you going? And do you still see anything wrapped up in your identity now?
Oh man. So it's funny, growing up through high school and college and even in my 20s, it was still this like mental construct, of who I thought I was. And even through my 20s, there was just like, even though you're growing and evolving and shifting and changing, the Rob likes these things and doesn't like those things and wears those clothes and likes that and it's like, when as I've grown more and kind of explored more of me, the more I realize, we're just like this infinity piece jigsaw puzzle. And we would do ourselves a tremendous disservice by trying to identify as this one thing. And yet it's, it's really safe to do that. It's really, and I think it's easy for us to like, I am this, and this means this, and this. So, and I think that's what's so beautiful about breath. And this specific breathwork practice is it snaps you out of that. Like it snaps you out of that, and it just like drops you into like, boom, like truth. Right.
Yep.
And it's from there that we can really experience all of these aspects of ourselves that maybe we've disowned, or maybe that we've, not looked at, or they maybe not even been aware of. And we start to experience these aspects of ourselves because the small, limited mind of this is who I am, and this is it, which excludes everything that isn't that. We get to drop in and breathe and explore so many more different aspects of ourselves. So I don't know if I was answering your question directly, but I do feel like, it was funny. I was actually just watching a documentary called Finding Joe about Joseph Campbell. And there's a quote that I'm going to butcher, but I'll summarize the quote. He says something along the lines of like, if a snake isn't shedding its skin, then it's not living. Something along those lines.
Right.
Where we're always going to be shedding, right? It's like these cycles are going to continue. We're not going to just stay one way. And I think for all of us, this past year has shown me that, where I had built so much of a life and identity around even like holding classes externally in these, in the studio space, and like being in community physically. And, I'm sure everyone has a similar story to like how there was some big part of their life, whether it was going into the office or going to the gym or doing this, that, and the other, that immediately got taken from them. Yeah. And if there's not an internal support structure or like a strong internal system or structure holding you up, then you can implode. And I feel like that's kind of what we've all seen from like, the external world as far as, structures and, things outside of us.
Mm-hmm.
Mate, and, to add to that question, then I gather with everything that's happened this year, Rob, like if you're going to sit in that for a moment, what's the story that you're currently telling yourself or projecting out to the world now? Like if you were going to summarize that as a blurb on the back of a book, what would that feel or sound like?
Just as it relates to this past year?
Yeah. Just as this year that's just happened.
God, what's coming up for me right now is I don't know shit.
Yes. Oh no, but I think
that's yeah. I think that's that's been the biggest one. I'm just astounded at how much I don't know, and I think that's what kind of keeps me going is exploring more and learning more about myself and what's underneath the hood, which can be scary sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And is that do you feel like that's probably a connection to the classes that you run too, about that exploration of how much you don't know and what's actually, as you're sort of saying, under the hood when people come to your classes and experience that expansion of possibility?
Thank you for that question. I feel like, and Michael, you can attest to this or speak to this, but I feel like as any guides or any any role that we might play where we're leading others or guiding others, as I do in my class, I'm unable to guide anyone past where I've gone myself in this journey and in this practice. We were talking about being a student athlete in college, but being a student to life is like the truest experience and truest life lessons I've learned have been life experience. They haven't been read from a book. Like I usually will look at the book and that will contextualize the experience that I've already had, essentially. And and that's what this breathwork experience is sure there are themes, there are human themes in the breathwork journey as the life journey. I mean, this breathwork journey is truly a micro to the macro of life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all of the shit that you see or you experience in your breathwork is like, it's going to be experienced in life somehow. The resistance that you meet in your breathwork journey is going to be the resistance. It's similar to the resistance that you meet out in the real world. So these journeys themselves are, they're truly like just like a little snapshot of how we move through life. Now it's in these journeys where anything is possible, anything can come up, and you're your own guide, right? Like, I haven't lived your life. I can't even speak to what you're experiencing in your journey, but I can speak to themes that that I think we all experience in one way or another, because we're all humans. You know, we're all going through a different flavor of the same stuff. And also, I know through my experience, through this practice, that breath will get you through your darkest stuff. Like, I know that, and I've experienced that. And that is where, that's where I come from when I'm holding these classes. I have such a trust in the breath now. And even though it may be uncomfortable sometimes, I know, because of my experience, that, you know, this breath is, it's only going to do what's best for us in the moment.
No, that's super powerful, mate. And I feel that breath, like, there's some reason why it's the first thing we do when we're born and the last thing we do when we leave. Like, it's the most precious resource any human has on the planet. You know, you need it more than food or water. And our ability to connect to that, like you do, is critical for our well-being, our happiness, and in many ways, our performance in life.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think there's something in that for sure.
Yeah. And also it's like, I think it's funny that, like, I think we're all teaching, or we're all most curious about the things that we need the most, right? So
True.
I'm someone who's my whole life has been holding my breath. And what I've found recently is, or not recently, but over the course of the past couple of years, is like, though it can be dangerous, I love thinking. Like, I actually love contemplating and just like playing with ideas and like tossing around, you know, ideas. And also I've become aware of, like, as I'm thinking, I'm not breathing. And that is not a good recipe. That's actually a recipe for disaster if you're not breathing and you're thinking too much. So what this practice has enabled me to do is actually become more conscious and present to my breath in the day to day, during the podcast, walking down the street, standing in line at the grocery store. Because it's in those moments where everything is like, we're all taken care of. We're all supported. And sometimes we can forget that. But the breath is always, it's here now. And we can't suffer in now.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. So here's, I mean, like, full disclosure on this aspect of it too. Breath has always been something that's been super important to me, because I'm asthmatic, and when I was a kid, that was tough. You know, I was hospitalized when I was very young. It's some of my first memories of just being a kid in general, of it actually having an awareness of like what was going on. I remember being in a hospital bed. I remember hearing the bleeding. I remember having to have, like IVs in me or whatever else. But I also remember having to have that face mask over me with albuterol just pumping through my lungs to get my lungs to open up. So I was also always, this is another funny testament to my personality too. I was always told that I can't do certain things because I was also asthmatic. So I was first one. I was the first one doing them. You know, like, you can't run today in a gym class.
Amazing.
yeah, right. Like we're gym class today. We're going to run a mile and go around the track, and you have asthma, so you can sit this out. Oh no, dude, I was F you. I'm running around. I'm going to run laps around everyone, holding
Yes.
my chest the entire time, whatever. But what I still remember now, and because I still do it now, part of the breath work that not only that I've learned from you or that was opened up to that, but also the yogic practices that I have now too, of just knowing how to connect with the breath. And I'm huge on meditation. I meditate every chance I get. You know what I mean? It's just like that's what I do. Like you said, standing in line at the store, like waiting for whatever else. Okay, beginner's mind. What can I do? How can I connect? Where's my anchor? My anchor is always my breath, because that's the first thing I learned. But when I was to walk it back a little bit, when I was younger, I learned how to breathe shallow and deep, depending on where my asthma, if it was an attack, if it was under control or not, or to even prep my body, knowing that I'm going to go run and do this. So I have to learn how to, okay, can I take a deep breath? Okay, let me warm myself up before I get into everything else. So I was always super conscious of how much breathing I couldn't do. But long story short, once I got into the where I'm at now and the studies that I'm in now, or the explorations, it isn't always just studies, but like especially with like breathwork classes like yours, I don't want to say I have a better control of my asthma, or I don't have whatever else. What's funnier is that like as I'm getting older, it goes in waves. Sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's really bad, whatever environment I'm in, whatever else. But that has always been my connector, and that has always been. It wasn't until the last a couple of years actually, that I realized how important the breath actually is. So taking a breathwork course, or actually understanding that. There's so many levels to it too, and it's probably the most empowering thing that I've ever done, especially taking some of your courses and stuff, and just like in being able to breathe with you there, because it's a whole other experience in comparison to some of this stuff too. It's like everybody's got their own school, and like you said, we all live our own flavors of whatever else it is too. But that's just where I what I collect on with there. But you brought up the word safety, and with breathing, you can, like I've learned that you can actually even bring yourself to like calm the nervous system, longer exhales to calm the vagal vagus nerve and all that kind of all that kind of stuff too, to get to that point too. But that was the first thing that I really realized, breathing in a class like that, or even yoga class with other people that haven't paid attention to their breath. Everyone freaked out. Because like you know how it goes. You like everyone's hands start to tense up, and you look at you look over and you see people panicking, and it's only 5 minutes into the breathwork class, and they're like, I can't do this for an hour, I'm gonna die. And I'm laughing my ass off going, that's been my whole life, dude. You know what I mean? Like, watch, trust it, feel it. Like, yeah, you haven't ever, I don't think any of us, unless we're following this path or learning this stuff, really understand how important the breath is. So trying to get to a question out of here too, it's more so me just sharing on that too. But like, you obviously see that too. You know what I mean? Your reaction to me just saying that too is like, you've seen other people freak out. What do you think, or can you explain a little bit of that connection of like safety, the discomfort that we feel, but then the euphoric effect that we feel after the fact, maybe on the science end of stuff, or even just the spiritual side, however else it is? Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I think it's it's such an interesting experience. And also just to reflect on what you were saying, I imagine because of the challenges that you've had with your breath, you've been able to have this intimate relationship with it. And that is, I think that is what, that is the message that I really hope, people can take with them after they breathe, is like, this is a relationship. It's a relationship with something that has been with you your whole life. Like, there's no need to be scared of your own breath. It's your breath. Like, so, and also this experience it's a very powerful experience. And, I think on a deep unconscious level, we can be really scared of like what monsters are under the bed.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't look under the bed, or we don't look in the closet. We just don't look. And that's why, breath work is, it's something that you can come into it with zero expectations, and all you have to do is breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And you have to feel safe to fully experience the experience.
Mm-hmm.
And like on a deep unconscious level, your cells in your body have to feel like they are in a safe environment in order for that healing to actually happen. It's not something that I say. It's the feeling that you get when you are around a facilitator or a class or wherever you're. It's the setting that you're in, right? It's like, oh, I feel safe in here. Okay, I trust this guide, or I trust this experience. I trust myself to breathe. Okay, I'm going to experience this medicine. Now, when we start freaking out is because we start experiencing things that we've never felt before in our life. So we start sweating profusely. And obviously we've sweat before, but maybe not from just like laying on the floor and breathing. Or, we start cramping up in our hands and our face. We start having the urge to shake our legs out or move our hands around. So when we start feeling these things, it can be scary. But if you are made aware of these things happening before they happen, then they're not as scary. So it's like, oh, well, he talked about it at the beginning of the class. Like, this is to be expected. This is normal, actually. This is a normal experience I'm having. So it's normalizing all the craziness.
Yeah.
This is completely normal. And, we meet that resistance of, I think it's really the mind that is just, or the ego, whatever you want to call it, that is just grabbing a hold of, control, the known world. Like this experience, you're just diving into the vast, deep unknown. And there's so much gold there. There's so much stuff to learn there. And also it can be quite scary. Our brain is designed to keep us safe in our comfort zone. This is an experience that like shoots you completely out of your comfort zone. And if you can get past that first, initial resistance, and blast through that, then it's like, I made it. I made it. And that's when you're surrendered in the experience, and you can just, I don't want to say coast, but you can, there's not so much forcing going on at that point.
Yeah, it's a surrender.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something before, Rob, that I think speaks to this that I'd love for you to unpack a bit more. And I'm not, again, I might butcher it, but you said there's no fear or there's no suffering or fear in the now. And let's, what does that mean for anyone that's listening that sort of thinks that that's a challenging statement?
Well, I think, if you just think about like, if you were just to take a snapshot of your day, of your mental process, of what you worried about, what you imagined, what you thought about, and you can either place these thoughts in the past, whether you were, you're worried about something that you did, or you're thinking about an incident that happened earlier in the day, yesterday, or you're projecting out in the future of like what might happen. I like to call it the shadow side of the imagination, where the imagination is like super fantastical and like beautiful and like, whoa, creative. And also there's a shadow side to it too, where it's like thinking all the worst case scenarios, thinking about all of that. And if you take a snapshot and look, and you're like, well, I'm either in the past or I'm in the future. But if I'm here now, if I'm just here now, breathing now, so deeply engaged with now and this moment and us talking and us listening, then everything is taken care of now. Like my heart's beating, I'm breathing, I'm blinking, I'm able to hear you. Like how perfect is that? Mm-hmm. Without any like effort on my part. I mean, these are all things that are just happening now. And when I think about the breathwork experience, all we're doing is diving deep into now and just diving deep into now through breath. And that is where, we start to have a lot of these realizations and insights and revelations because we're present.
I just think there's so much in that for someone who's listening, who at that conceptual mind level, it's hard for us to feel or experience or understand that because the mind is in the driver's seat a lot of the time, and it's becoming hooked or driving that fear or that overwhelm or that anxiety. That there's a home in the here and now that's a safer place if we can just find it. And sometimes it's hard to get that.
Yes. And what a safe place our breath is. Like if you like really unlayer the breath itself, right? It's been with you before the mind even started forming memories, right? So it's been there carrying you. It's been through every single experience. It can't be conditioned, like the breath can't be conditioned like the mind can be, the mind can cause a lot of problems. It can. Yeah, it can. I mean, not to just hate on the mind. I love the mind. Like the mind is also, can be super creative and all that. But the breath is just like, I just talk about it as being like an anchor. I know you said that, Michael. It's truly an anchor to now. And we can always come back to the breath.
Yeah.
We can always just become intimately connected to the breath, whether we're lying on the floor and doing breath work or whether we're, walking down the street. It's always a tether to now. And I will also say, so is sound, and just really like hearing sounds or listening to music, truly listening to music. If you actually put on some music and lie down and just listen to the sound and like try and pinpoint where the sound is coming from, like we're taken into now with that. So there are a lot of ways to get there, but I think those are two real like digestible ways of like, what does being present even mean?
That's, it's we, when I mentioned before too about the breath being an anchor, and my relationship with my own breath and whatever it was too, to kind of piggyback more on what we're getting at with this, there was always a point, or at least the first realization that I had too, is like, nobody taught us. I can't remember where it might even be like an Alan Watts book that I was reading too. But the breath was always the anchor for me when I, beforehand, but when I really understood or started learning how to meditate or attempting to learn how to meditate, that was the thing. And it was like, no one taught us how to breathe. We just intuitively knew how to do it. We didn't go into class, or mom and dad didn't take us aside and say, okay, now we're going to learn how to breathe in and breathe out. It just happened. It's the first thing that we do. It's like, in order to make the first sound, which is the other connection that I'm going to make with the sound too. In order to make a sound, we had to inhale. We had to take that first breath as a baby, as a newborn human on this planet, to go, wow, we had to do that. You know what I mean? So that's super powerful. And like Luke said too, it's the last thing that we do. Our breath leaves us. We don't continue breathing after. I mean, yes, there could be like the brain dead or whatever else when it comes to along those. But for just simplistic interpretation of all this kind of stuff. It is the first and last thing that we do. And with it being an anchor, it's how often do you hear, hey man, do you remember that game that you played back when you were in college or whatever, or that song that you played when you were on stage that one time, or the first time you kissed a girl? How are you breathing? You know what I mean? Like that's not usually what comes up, because it's something that is taken for granted. But it's the first thing for me when I lost it as a kid. When I would lose that, that's the first thing I would go to. Where's my breath? Where am I at? Which might be one reason why I actually gravitated towards meditation, yoga, and breath work, breathworks and everything else on that too. That's just really just a comment that I had on that too, where it was just like, when we put our mind to our breath as well too, like there's a chance that we could actually lose it. If we overthink too much and don't trust the breath or whatever it is, if we start to think about it, there's a chance that we're actually going to lose it, and then when you mentioned holding the breath too, like that's when we actually lose it. You have to let it go as much as you have to let it come in. So I think it's a really good, for me, it's a really good metaphor of how life works itself. It's the constant waves. We take it in. Okay, that's great. Well, you got to let it go though too, because as soon as it hits your lungs, within seconds, it becomes a poison to you. It becomes a completely different thing. So you have to let it go back out. Oxygen comes in, turns into carbon dioxide, and then carbon dioxide will kill you and suffocate you if you don't release it, so you can get another breath of the good. And what's beautiful about that with being a byproduct, not to get super, into it too, but like our byproduct of that carbon dioxide goes to plants, to anything green, to all the trees and everything else. And they do the exact opposite. They take the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere and give us the oxygen that we need to breathe. So if you look at the combination of what the breath actually does for us, just on the micro level, like you said too, but then look at the macro level, it is a really good analogy of how life comes. It's going to come in. You got to let it go, even if it was good, because the next one's going to come, and you have to. It's a constant flow and a constant give and take, I guess.
Do you think, Rob, from that, do you think like, are we intuitively or innately as children taught how to breathe? Like, do we know how to breathe properly as kids? And you watch baby bellies and they just breathe that sort of pure breath. And then the second part of that question is what drags us away from being able to maintain that as we get older? Is that the stresses of life that shorten it, or what prevents that from staying with us?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I think if you look at babies breathing into their bellies, or you look at, even if you look at like fish, right? Fish are just like breathing deep down in their belly. I can speak to my personal experience on where I noticed, how I was breathing, and it had to do with body image, where even as a younger kid, it was kind of like, wanting to have a smaller stomach, or a stomach that looked flatter, or that would appeal to, girls at the swimming pool, something super, super simple like that. Right. And I would like just be unconsciously holding my stomach in, holding my breath in, like just going about life that, like never actually fully relaxing. And I mean, that's just my story, but like you have, I'm sure there's anybody's got, similar stories of, maybe they got poked in the stomach on the playground when they were in the first grade, or it's something like this where they start holding their breath. So that's kind of been my experience of holding my breath, but also just like pretending like I always had it together.
Yeah.
Like I always have it together, like your stomach is in, it's rock hard, right? In case, someone comes up on you, it's like, it's there. Yeah. But like you always had it together. So your body was like, a little harder, and you're just more tense. You weren't actually fully relaxed. And, that is kind of how it's Yes. Got a legit leopard here.
Somebody's hungry or just wants attention.
Yeah. But in my experience, that is how, I've related to the breath, where it wasn't really something that I thought, to be something that could actually serve me.
Yeah.
Like outside of just giving me a breath every breath. I never thought it could actually be a power tool, like an actual deep medicine that would give me exactly what I need when I don't even know, when I have no clue what's currently causing my troubles. The fact that you can lie down on the floor and you can breathe and not even have to know. You don't even have to have any sort of idea. All you need to do is lay down and breathe and trust and allow whatever wants to come up to come up. Like that's all you have to do. And that is why I think there are a lot of people that are like, what? No way. It's that simple.
Yeah.
But because we've been doing it our whole life, people, we just look like, when I first started, we just look right over the breath. Truly, we look right over it. We want to complicate it all. We don't need to complicate it all. All we need to do is lie down and breathe. Mm-hmm. But people will hear this and be like, nah, come on, whatever, man. You just breathe it, right? What do you mean just breathe? I'm serious. Yeah. Just lie down and breathe. That's it.
Yeah. And when you talk, Rob, about it, as being medicine, in the classes that you run and in the clients that you've got, medicine for what?
So, when we unpack the breath and what it allows to happen in our body when you're actually breathing, it's like this. You have to kind of use metaphors with the experience, but it's like this. I want to say it's like a one size fits all because everyone's breathing the same breath, right? But we're all breathing it completely differently. Stan Groff, who's a amazing psychotherapist and founder of a different type of breath work, but similar holotropic breath work, describes the breath's function as, or the breath's ability to go in and to do the medicinal work internally. He describes it as a radar function, and where the breath itself is actually going into and has this intelligence to release or show us or allow the body to experience what it needs to experience to actually move into healing. These are natural processes that we actually have with us now. And he describes the breath amazing ability of doing this. And that's what I mean by medicine is it's not a pill. It's not one thing. It's like, this is attached to this, which is attached to this, which is attached to this. It's a constellation. It's all connected. And the breath gets into the root of it. And it's like, and all of a sudden you see how this was affecting this over here and was affecting this over here. It's all interconnected. So how can you, just treat a symptom, just treat, a leaf on the tree with, Western medicine? It's like, let's get into the roots. And breath has this amazing intelligence of doing that. And I experienced that firsthand where my greatest fear and, what pushed me to be very, self-destructive and depressed and anxious and all this was, from a sexual trauma that happened, like 14 years ago. But I didn't know that was underneath the surface. I had buried that so deep into my unconscious that like when I laid down to breathe, I suddenly saw that this was a big root of it, of my troubles in that current day. And I didn't know that. The breath did, though. Mm-hmm. All I had to do was actually just like lay down and breathe.
So is it almost a bit, sorry, Mike, is it almost a bit like, Rob, that the breath, when connected and built that relationship too, is almost the gateway that helps find a lot of the ailments, a lot of the struggles, a lot of the things we've got that we don't even realize we've got sitting deep below. And it's like the breath's the canal to help unpack some of that.
Yeah, I describe it as it's a tool. It's a tool. The breath is a tool. It's a shovel. It's a shovel that unburies us, that uncovers us, and we can use it as such. And it changes shape too. Whereas, like, you first start breathing, and if you were like me when you first started doing breath work, I was coming from a college football background, so it was like bigger, faster, stronger. I'm going to breathe like that. Yep. Not knowing how powerful this breath is, I'm just going to, I'm just breathing, and then approach it with that type of mentality. And then now it's a little bit softer, where it's changed and it's evolved as I've evolved. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's astounding. It's straight up astounding at what is possible with this breath, because the same breath that was helping me through some of my deep, dark stuff is also the same breath that is helping me to solve problems and be more creative and, like connect the dots on certain things creatively too. So it's got like this, it's whatever you need in each moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's great. Like, I'm almost at a loss for words right now too, because my mind again is starting to become creative just thinking about this stuff. It's just like you're hitting on a lot of things that are just ringing true, and just like kind of stimulating other aspects of it. One thing I want to point out, and just like not only commend you for, but just point out too, every time I've talked to you about this kind of stuff, even if it was just in passing, or even, or even just simple DMs or whatever else, you never lose the passion for this. You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the biggest things that's really going to draw a lot of people into exploring all these other, I don't even want to call them other methods or other things that are available to us that aren't a pill. You know what I mean? So I'm stoked that you still get just as excited talking about this, because which not only, I don't want to say just proves that it really worked for you, but you see it work, you feel it work. And I have too, which is fantastic. And I really hope that a lot of people that are listening to this too will latch onto that enthusiasm. You know what I mean? Because it's like, and it's like in my head, it's like, it's not just the breath that's doing it. It's, it's you that's doing it too, but it's the breath that brought you the enthusiasm, that brought you the creativity, that brought you to be able to open up into these other worlds of, of, like you said, this is dark. I went through, some dark times, the dark night of the soul. I found all the trauma that was buried, but like you said, it was a shovel. I unburied it, I uncovered it, and then now I can let it breathe and turn into whatever else it needs to. So.
Yes, and the dragons protect the treasure chest. Like seriously, like in all the movies, Joseph and Campbell. All like the stories, it's like the dragons are, protecting the princess or protecting the gold, like whatever it is. So we actually have to, like, if you actually want to take this leap, right? You take this leap, circle it back to the hero's journey. If you answer the call and truly answer the call and like pick up the fucking phone and really jump into it and do that, then you're the enthusiasm, the passion, all of that is baked in the journey because of, the dragons that you've trained,
Mm-hmm.
instead of
trained you.
What's that?
Or that have trained you.
Yeah. Yeah. How to Train Your
Yep.
Dragon's been on my mind as I've been watching that movie. But I think, my passion comes from like, healing my deepest, darkest stuff with my own breath.
Yeah.
And I also know that you're breathing the same breath. Like, it works, and it's your breath and it's my breath, and we share this breath, and it's going to work on you the way it needs to work on you. And also, if you trust, if you take that leap into breath or this journey or whatever it is, it's not easy, but it is the most fulfilling thing that you could do. And I don't think breath work is for everybody. I don't think like, for everybody listening to this right now, that everyone needs to go do breath work. But I do think it's for people that have that whisper inside of them, where it whispers and it's like, yo, I'm kind of curious about this breathwork thing. Some of what they were talking about was like really landing for me. I'm just going to try it. And it's listening to that whisper, because if you can cultivate that whisper, if you can cultivate the sound of that curiosity, you're on your path. Like, that is the compass. And that's going to take you where you need to go. But if you're too, sometimes that voice is hard to hear with everything that's happening in our world. So,
talk to me, Robert.
I'm just excited to see. I'm excited to see the lives that come out of committing to this practice, because I know what it's done for me. And you look at me 4 years ago, I'm a completely different person.
Talk to me, Rob, about the role curiosity plays in your life. You've mentioned that a few times in the podcast about being curious and opening up, and how does that show up for you day to day?
Yeah, I really believe that curiosity is our soul's way of guiding us towards our truth and the gifts that we're here to share with the world. Like, 100% believe that. And it comes through in our interests. It comes through in our preferences. It comes through in just those little whispers, those little moments where you're just like, I wonder what's over there. Like, that voice, that is us being guided by a higher power. And there's been so many times that this voice has come through for me, and I listen to it, and it's created straight up magic. Michael, you were at Sanctum, right? You popped into Sanctum. Yeah. So, a quick story on curiosity and how Sanctum got started was, I was painting, and at the time I was just drawing on record vinyls, and this Venice Beachland, which was like this this quirky place in the corner in Venice, they were doing a 2-for-1 vinyl sale. And I was walking by the street, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go in there. I'm going to just poke around and get some vinyls and, paint on some vinyls. And I was just poking my head around, and I ended up poking my head into this bus, Mystic Disco bus. And I saw this guy working there, and he was cutting some jewelry that he was making. His name is Leo. And he was also in the midst of creating this community center, this community space studio. He didn't really know what was going to go there, but he was feeling called to create a space for people to gather. And initially it was, going to be like a yoga studio or, something of that sort. And I just wandered in there, and we just started talking. And then, over the course of the next couple of weeks, he was like, hey, do you want to do a breathwork class in here? And I was like, yeah, I'd love to do a breathwork class. And so we held our first breathwork class on a Sunday, and there were 4 people in it, and we just kept holding these classes, and then over the course of the next year and a half, it turned into like just this super successful breathwork studio. And they were like, oh, the best teachers were coming through there teaching like every night. You know, classes were packed. It was all filled through word of mouth. We weren't doing any marketing, and it was just such a vibe in there. And we had like 20 classes happening each week, and it was jammed packed. And that all started really from just like the curiosity of like poking around and being open. You know, we shut curiosity off so much by being closed, by letting the mind take over. You know, I wonder what's over there. And you go and you're like, oh, wait, no, I don't have time for that. I got to go to this meeting. Yeah. I got to run. Yeah. And we shut it down. Like magic is trying to work its way into our life on the daily, but we have to be silent enough to hear it. We have to be open enough to follow it. I love talking about curiosity, dude.
I only say that, man, because I think to build relationships or to grow or whatever in life, it's like almost the starting point for everything is let's get curious about that. For me, it's really like you, Rob, it's really helped me in life in whatever I've done to get better is to actually get curious about exploring potential opportunities, relationships, things. So yeah, it's super powerful. I think it's undersold a lot. You know, happiness and kindness are there, but curiosity, not so much.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Michael.
Okay. Just for me on the curiosity thing too is, growing up with the insecurities that I had growing up, I always thought I had to be right, and admitting that you were curious meant you didn't know about it already. You didn't know enough. And that was always the thing that held me back, because I wouldn't allow that curiosity, but I had a drive behind it to go behind the scenes and then study about it so I would know about it and do whatever else. But there's a difference between the experience of it and then reading the books on it too. And that's one thing I loved about, the journey that I'm on with it is like giving in. I don't want to say giving into that curiosity, but listening to it. Like you said, being quiet enough or still enough to trust it and just, what is that? I don't know. Let's find out. You know what I mean? Because I don't know, and I will know. And, it's like, there's a really interesting parallel between what we were talking about before too, of being in the now. Like there's no suffering in right now. They're just in the past or the future. And that's what was controlling me. In the past, I didn't know. In the future, I will know. But how do I get there without being in the now? And in listening to that curiosity and opening that door and just seeing what happens. So that's pretty cool. I'm glad you guys brought up the curiosity aspect.
Yeah. And to anybody listening right now, like while we're talking about curiosity, 2 things. One, you can use curiosity as a way to move through any fears that you might have. So I'm just going to use a very simple example, like maybe you want to ask someone out, right? It's a pretty common human thing, right? You want to ask someone out. From my experience, the more I thought about it, the more scared I would get. All of scenarios of why I would get shut down, turned down, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So you can flip that in the moment. Instead of thinking about like, oh, what am I going to say? Or like all this stuff, you can just go into, I wonder what would happen if. I wonder what would happen if I asked this person out. What would happen? And you approach it through this like inquisitive, like maybe I get turned down, maybe I don't. Maybe it turns into something magical. Maybe it doesn't, So that's one thing that you can do that I think can be super helpful, is just flipping it and becoming very curious. But then also seeing that, like, your preferences, the way you cook your food, like the way you do things, like these are things that make you, you. and to lean into that, to not discount that. Oh, that's just the way I am. It's like, yeah, the fuck yeah, it is. That is the way you are. Like, and that's what makes you you. So like, don't like discount that stuff, but actually like there's gold in that. There's like, wow, well, why do I like this? You know?
Yeah.
And that can be, you know, this can be pieces to, you know, to really getting on that journey, right? Or getting on that path.
Man, like, I think, you know, we started the podcast and we started with you, Rob, talking about 2020 being a blurb of how little you know and how much you don't know. And I think we finished with curiosity, which is exploring, again, how little we know and getting curious on learning more. So I think, you know, it's probably a good place to finish it up, mate. But I'd love for you to tell the audience, where can they catch you or learn more about Breathwork and what you do? Because I think there's a lot of gold in this conversation.
Yes, thank you. So you can find me on Instagram at starbuck.rob. And I, over the course of the past year, to touch on the story I just told, we had to, we obviously stopped doing breathwork classes in person, and we put all our focus into creating an online experience for people to experience breathwork whenever they need, wherever they need. So all that can be found on my website, robstarbuck.com, and then abreathworkjourney.com. And at abreathworkjourney.com, you have access. There's a free journey on there that you can do. There are rental journeys that you can do. I also do a live class on Sunday evenings at 5 p.m. Pacific too, if you want to plug in live. Yeah, that's where I'll be.
Awesome.
Man, thanks for coming on the middle path. Really appreciate it. I felt like we probably could have gone on for another couple of hours, but you know, it was good to explore and just to touch base because you know, it was a good relationship and I really loved it. Actually, it was awesome.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate it, Michael. Thank you, Luke, and thank you for the container to share story.